The Longbottom trial. You don't understand what real torture is until you understand that death was never the goal. Death would have been mercy. What Frank and Alice Longbottom were subjected to was something far worse, a controlled destruction of consciousness itself. The Cruciatus curse does not cut skin, break bone, or spill blood. It attacks the nervous system directly. Every pain receptor in the body activates at once. The brain receives a signal so overwhelming that it cannot prioritize, cannot filter, cannot adapt. The body locks in place, breathing turns shallow. The mind panics as pain exceeds any natural survival threshold. Once can traumatize. Repeated exposure erodes identity itself. Memory fragments. Emotional recognition fails. Personality collapses inward until nothing remains but instinct and confusion. Frank and Alice Longbottom were not random victims. They were seasoned aurors. They had hunted dark wizards during Voldemort's rise. They survived the First War, only to be captured after it was already over. Bellatrix Lestrange, her husband Rodolphus, his brother Rabistan, and Barty Crouch Jr. did not interrogate them. They did not seek intelligence. They chose punishment for punishment's sake. Their goal was not information. Their goal was annihilation of the self. By the time the Ministry recovered them, both aurors were alive and permanently destroyed. They could no longer recognize their surroundings, their friends, or their own child. Neville Longbottom did not lose his parents to death. He lost them to a state worse than death. The Wizengamot trial that followed was brutally efficient. There was no debate over guilt. The evidence was irrefutable. The damage was permanent. All 4 perpetrators were sentenced to life in Azkaban without review. What made that sentence legally irreversible was an emergency wartime designation known as irredeemable malice classification, a status applied only to crimes involving intentional psychological erasure rather than battlefield violence. Once applied, all avenues of appeal vanished. There would be no parole, no review hearings, no psychiatric consideration. The law did not seek balance. It sought erasure in return. Bellatrix Lestrange did not beg for mercy. She laughed. She screamed Voldemort's name in celebration as the sentence was passed. Her loyalty was never broken. But the true outcome of this trial is even darker. Barty Crouch Jr. never truly served his sentence. His mother secretly arranged for him to escape Azkaban using Polyjuice Potion. Because Dementors detect only life force, not identity, the switch succeeded. She died in his place. The Ministry recorded him as deceased. The victims were destroyed forever. The Lestranges were condemned forever. And one of the guilty escaped entirely. Justice was declared, but it was never fully carried out. The corrupted acquittal. You expect chains. You expect guards. You expect terror in the eyes of the accused. Instead, you are met with calm voices, polished robes, and the quiet sound of power negotiating in whispers. Lucius Malfoy did not deny his involvement with Voldemort. He reframed it. He claimed that every crime he committed had occurred under the Imperious Curse, a spell that strips away free will and legally erases intent. If the claim is accepted, the crime becomes non-volitional. In the eyes of the law, it never truly happened. Under normal procedure, this defense requires deep verification, memory extraction, veritaserum testimony, independent corroboration, psychological residue analysis. None of that occurred. The Wizengamot accepted Malfoy's claim immediately. What followed was not justice, it was negotiation. Influence reshaped silence. Donations bent votes without ever announcing themselves. The courtroom did not test whether Malfoy had been controlled. It assumed it, because he was powerful enough to be believed. The outcome was absolute. All charges dropped. All assets untouched. All political standing restored. Lucius Malfoy returned to society as if the war had never brushed against his hands. But beyond that chamber were families who would never receive reparations, homes that were never rebuilt, names that were never cleared. They did not lose in battle. They lost through paperwork. This ruling created a dangerous precedent. Other Death Eaters followed. The Imperious defense became a legal escape hatch for the well-connected. The law split in two, one version for the unprotected and one for those whose wealth could reshape procedure itself. Azkaban became the destination for the powerless. Some criminals are dragged into darkness, others purchase their return to the light. The Informant trial. Fear changes the air in a room without making a sound. You feel it when someone realizes that their life has been reduced to a bargaining chip. Igor Karkaroff did not come to deny his crimes, he came to trade them. The Wizengamot invoked a rarely used wartime statute known as total cooperative exoneration, a legal instrument that allows a defendant's sentence to be erased entirely in exchange for intelligence deemed vital to national security. Under this statute, corroboration becomes optional. Names alone may suffice. Under normal law, uncorroborated testimony is one of the weakest forms of evidence. It is considered unreliable because it is structurally incentivized to lie. Under this statute, that safeguard vanished. Karkaroff began to speak. Each name pushed him farther from execution. Each name pushed someone else closer to Dementors. The result was immediate, full immunity, immediate release, no sentence. He walked free the same day others he named were dragged to Azkaban in chains. Many of them were convicted on testimony alone. Legally, this created a catastrophic inversion of risk. The informant risked nothing, the accused lost everything, and the court became dependent on testimony it could not safely challenge without collapsing its own deal. This structure does not reward truth, it rewards leverage. When Voldemort returned, the dark mark burned again. Karkaroff fled. He stopped sleeping indoors. He abandoned safety, allies, and protection. He lived like prey, and eventually the past caught him. He was found in a northern forest. The dark mark burned above his corpse. The law saved him once. Terror collected him later. When justice becomes currency, it does not remove danger. It only delays the moment it returns. The Scapegoat Expulsion. You are still a child when they decide your life is already over. Rubeus Hagrid was 13 when the Chamber of Secrets first opened. Students were being attacked. The castle became a rumor engine. Whispers in corridors, teachers lowering their voices, parents writing panic letters. The ministry did not arrive to investigate deeply. It arrived to restore public confidence as fast as possible. Someone had to be blamed. Hagrid was half giant, too large, too loud, too easy to fear. In a society conditioned to see giants as unstable weapons, a half-giant child was not viewed as vulnerable. He was viewed as a threat waiting to be justified. When Myrtle Warren was killed, Tom Riddle stepped forward with a story that delivered the ministry exactly what it needed, a single convenient culprit. Riddle accused Hagrid of keeping a monster, the Acromantula Aragog, and of unleashing it from a secret chamber within the school. No full investigation followed, no structural survey of the castle, no magical forensics, no attempt to reconcile Acromantula behavior with basilisk symptoms. The accusation itself, coming from a model student, was treated as evidence. What followed was not a trial. It was an administrative execution. Hagrid's wand was snapped. In wizarding law, this punishment is almost unheard of without full criminal conviction. A snapped wand is not discipline. It is permanent revocation of magical citizenship. It strips education, career, and legal standing in a single motion. To justify this, the ministry invoked emergency authority, a panic statute designed for national crises, not for punishing children. Once applied, the ruling could not be quietly undone without admitting failure. 50 years later, the truth emerged. The monster had never been Hagrid's. His name was formally cleared, but his wand was never restored. His education was never returned. His childhood was never repaired. The lie was erased from the files. The consequences stayed inside his life. The political prosecution. You believe you are entering a hearing. You do not realize you are stepping into a trap constructed entirely from procedure. Harry Potter was charged with underage use of magic after casting a Patronus to save his cousin from Dementors. Under normal law, this case should never have reached court. When hostile non-human entities are present, emergency self-defense statutes override age-based restrictions automatically. But the ministry manipulated jurisdiction. The hearing time was altered without proper notice. The venue was changed without warning. The charge was inflated beyond proportional authority. This tactic is known in wizarding law as constructed noncompliance, when the state engineers procedural failure rather than proving guilt. The goal was not conviction. It was discredit, isolation, public collapse. Before the trial even began, the Daily Prophet framed Harry as unstable. Rumors spread, credibility eroded. The ministry did not need a verdict to damage him. The process itself was the weapon. Only Dumbledore's intervention disrupted the trap. Witnesses were forced forward. Dementors were acknowledged. The truth broke through at the final moment. Harry was declared not guilty. He kept his wand. He stayed in school. But the true outcome was darker. The ministry had proven it could weaponize the law against a child, and nearly succeed. From that moment on, Harry was no longer hunted only by Voldemort. He had become a valid target of the state itself, and once the law learns how to aim at you, it never forgets how. The illegal sentencing. You are not always tried in court. Sometimes you are simply processed. Sirius Black was arrested for the murder of 12 Muggles and Peter Pettigrew. The explosion was real. The bodies were real. The panic was real. What never happened was a trial. The ministry declared the evidence self-evident. Eyewitnesses saw Black laughing in the wreckage. They did not verify spell residue. They did not examine wand alignment. They did not interrogate motive. They did not test for animagus involvement. The case was administratively closed the same day it was opened. Sirius was sent directly to Azkaban, without a single appearance before the Wizengamot. This violated one of the oldest protections in wizarding law. No life sentence may be imposed without formal judicial review. That safeguard exists precisely to stop political panic from replacing proof. It was ignored completely. The ministry did not want a conviction. It wanted a symbol. Sirius Black became the face of Voldemort's remaining terror, a living warning that the war was not over, and that punishment would be absolute. His guilt was never tested, because testing it would have required the ministry to admit uncertainty at the height of public fear. He spent 12 years in Azkaban, surrounded by Dementors, creatures that feed on guilt, despair, and memory. They strip joy. They collapse hope. They dissolve sanity. Sirius survived not because he was innocent in the eyes of the law, but because he knew he was innocent in reality. The clarity of that truth kept him conscious when others went mad. When the truth finally emerged, no apology followed. No legal reckoning occurred. No official wrongdoing was ever acknowledged. Sirius Black lost 12 years of his life to a sentence that had never been legally imposed in the first place. That is not wrongful conviction. That is law bypassed entirely. Blood status tribunals. Sometimes the courtroom is no longer a place of judgment. Sometimes it becomes a factory. Under Voldemort's control, the ministry established the Muggle-Born Registration Commission, a tribunal designed to retroactively strip magical identity from anyone unable to prove pure ancestry. The charge was simple: theft of magic. There was no legal basis for this crime. Magic is not property. Blood is not evidence. And yet thousands were summoned. The hearings followed a fixed script. The accused entered unrepresented. They were denied memory verification. They were denied wand history analysis. They were denied ancestral records that the ministry itself controlled. Guilt was presumed at the door. Those declared guilty were not imprisoned in Azkaban. They were sentenced to wand seizure, a punishment considered worse than incarceration. Without a wand, a witch or wizard is not merely restricted. They are erased from magical society entirely. Employment vanishes. Protection vanishes. Legal recognition vanishes. Families collapsed overnight. Children were stripped of education. Adults vanished into poverty, exile, or hiding. This was not law enforcement. It was bureaucratic cleansing. The most dangerous part was not the cruelty. It was the paperwork. Everything was documented, filed, logged, approved. Every signature gave the illusion of legitimacy to something that had never been legitimate at all. When the regime fell, the records were quietly sealed. The stolen years were not restored. The lost wands were not fully returned. The system that destroyed them was dismantled, but the damage had already been made permanent.